What's up, and welcome back to the Talking Nutrition Podcast. Today's episode 81, where we're going to talk about successful weight loss phases, kind of like what it takes, what you should be focusing on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. A couple things to keep in mind. And I feel like we've chatted about, preparing for fat loss phases a lot. I mean, I definitely have on Instagram. So I feel like now the logic next step will be, hey, if you are in a fat loss phase currently, and by the way, if that's the case, like this episode is definitely for you. But also if you're, planning on a weight loss phase. But like what should you be focusing on? Now, before we get into the episode, make sure to do us a quick favor. Drop us a quick 5-star rating on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen. YouTube, remember too that we do have a YouTube channel as well where you can subscribe and literally just comment on any video and ask your questions, and we'll record that during the Q&A episode. I feel like we've done a lot of Q&A stuff with the September Q&A recordings recently. However, we're going to be recording actual Q&A episodes maybe in a couple of weeks. So if you would like to contribute, make sure to drop us a comment anywhere on YouTube, or you can go to Spotify, go to the show notes, and then you can submit them directly there. Now, let's get into it. What does it take to get into a fat loss phase and be successful? I think we need to zoom out. And I already talked about, the fact that we've been, talking about preparing for it. I do want to start with periodization though, because here's the thing. What have you been done leading up to it? And how are we going to combine, your fat loss goal, for example, it now being Q4, with Christmas, with, Thanksgiving? Maybe you do celebrate Halloween. Like I don't really do, anything Halloween wise. And, Thanksgiving is also another thing here. But hey, like if you do celebrate those kind of things, or hey, let's imagine birthdays, vacations, whatever it is, New Year's Eve, the list goes on, Easter, whatever. That's a big one here in Norway. How do we go about including those things? Because they always will come up. We need to learn how to include that stuff. And you may have a fat loss goal, and that's great, but you should probably not be trying to diet during Thanksgivings or Christmas or whatever it may be. So I want you to know that being successful there may just include like taking breaks. Because if you try to diet through those times, like you're not going to be successful. I can pretty much guarantee you that. And it's not necessary anyway. You can do it before, you can do it after. Now we're recording this at October 12th. So we have a little bit of time. So let's assume that you're either dieting right now or you're about to. What can you expect? How will we take breaks? And what do you need to focus on a daily basis, but then also weekly? This episode will kind of help you get through it, or at least, be ready for it. And you'll realize too, like it's actually super simple. I'm not going to say that it's easy, but once you've done the pre work that we've talked about a lot recently, and that's in place, it's actually very simple. And it's literally a matter of just rinse and repeat every single day. You do the same stuff over and over again, and it doesn't really change. And then at some point, right, you lose weight, you see a plateau, which isn't really a plateau, it's just your body adapting, it's normal. And then you would make your further, your future calorie adjustment. But let's start there. Did we plan for these phases well? Have you done the pre work? Because if anything, like that is the number one thing that will make you successful here. We'll talk about what happens in the fat loss phase soon. But if you've not done the pre work, you've not tracked, you're not consistently hitting your targets, you're not eating your fruits and vegetables, you're not hitting the gym yet, building some muscle, or at least maintaining the muscle, because that's going to be key during the fat loss phase. If those things are not in check yet, which is fine, by the way, it's cool, but then you should probably wait with that fat loss phase, which I know you want to jump into, but without the pre work, your results will not be as good. And we've seen that difference, right? From people coming to us after diet, after diet, after diet, after diet, unfortunately falling off a lot, regaining. It's frustrating. But from that to saying, hey, you know what? I know you really want to lose weight, and that's why you came to me, but we're going to spend a month, 2 months at maintenance. We're going to build some habits first. It's a difficult thing, but I always say, like, hey, we can do it now and get better results and enjoy it long term. Or we can skip this and just not get a great fat loss phase in, see like mediocre results, like at best. And then you're going to be frustrated. And then once we go to maintenance, it's actually likely going to be even more difficult. So let's do this first. Okay. The things you need to be doing. I mean, first of all, you got to hit your targets. You should be tracking. You should be tracking. Like if you want to lose weight, if you want to do it effectively, tracking is number one. I understand that it's not for everyone, and there are different tools. And I will say there's a time and place for other methods, but I'm still going to ask you, like, hey, are we open to learning how to track? Because I can teach you. And in a couple of months, you can get, not even a couple of months, a couple of weeks, you can get super efficient. Wouldn't it be worth it to actually learn that? Because without really getting too much into like the pushback on tracking, a lot of people do have like this weird idea, like it's going to take a lot of time and it's going to lead to an eating disorder and it's going to, right? It doesn't work, whatever it is. And they wait and they wait and they wait and they wait. And guess what happens? Because they don't give it a shot. They try another fad diet. They spend another month doing something super strict. They fall off, regain, try something else, try something else. And we end up spending 6 to 12 months doing random stuff that doesn't really help, that sounds really good, while you could have done the thing that's a little bit more effort. I will say that, a little bit more effort, but that is learning your, tracking macros and taking some time to also learn how to do it right. And, like, I know, like when you jump into it right away, it's gonna be annoying. I know that. Like when I use Chronometer for the first time or any other app, I was also like, like I can't find the food, whatever it is. And we recently talked about that, so I don't have to dive into it now. But it's like you got to give yourself a chance there. You have to, because it's either now putting in the effort to learn and then get better results, or you're gonna spin your wheels, guessing. So we don't want to be guessing. So hitting your targets should be number one. You could do calories and protein, and those are kind of like two of the three pillars I want to talk about. But if you're a little bit more advanced, go with macros because you can control your carbs and fats a little bit better. Than you want to drop your fats basically as low as possible. For most people, it's going to be around 50 grams, just to keep that at a bare minimum for health, for hormones. And then your protein should be nice and high. And then carbs is going to basically fill in the rest of your calories. And that's where you'll see the biggest differences. And that's not because carbs are bad. It's just that, well, protein needs to be high, fat's already low. The only toggle we have would be, your carbs. And I will say your steps as well. Now, let's get into the three pillars. Number one, already kind of gave it away with, hitting your targets, your calories. Calories are still king. Calories is the thing that will lead to you gaining, losing, or maintaining your weight. And I'm not talking about like a daily fluctuation. No, I'm talking like longer term, like weekly, monthly trends. At the end of the day, yes, hormones play a big role. There's a lot of other stuff going on still that impacts your fat loss goals. But guess what? It only does so because it affects calories in as well as calories out. So when we look at energy balance, it's not just like food and exercise. There's many different factors there, and both are influenced by hormones, plus both play into each other as well. So I'm not gonna like confuse you here, but please know that like both matters, hormones, calories, etc. But at the end of the day, if we really like, I was gonna say zoom out, but like zoom in, at the end of the day, it's the calories. So if you are in calorie deficit, literally meaning like you're eating fewer calories than your body actually needs to survive, and that's why you're burning body fat, like that's where you should be for fat loss. If you're in the surplus, that's where you gain. That's where you want to be for muscle gain, right? We're not just trying to gain body fat, like we want to build muscle. We need to purposely eat more than our body burns. And maintenance, which is really a range, it's like a window. Like we're not going to know exactly how many calories you burn. But if we stick to like roughly a range of like, it's really like 200 plus calories. If you're there, like you're good. But like I said, zoomed in, like it's the calories. It's what's coming in, what's going out, like how much are you burning. That will dictate fat loss, muscle gain, or just weight gain and loss in general, and maintenance. So you got to control your calories. Like I said, there are other methods, but I will always say tracking is number one. It's a little bit more effort. I know that. It's also not a lifestyle thing. We are going to step away from it, but give it a shot. Like, honestly, it's the best way to do it. It's the best way. I've seen people try like plate methods and hand portions and whatever, but that's that's maybe good for like maintenance, but for a fat loss phase, you're going to be guessing at best. So it's calories first. Then we have protein. Protein is king. Well, second king, I guess. Queen, let's say, because it's the most important macronutrient. It's involved in so many processes all throughout the body. It literally builds you. Like, it's what builds your muscle. Guess what? If you eat meat, what is that? It's muscle, right? It's protein. So remember that too, right? We want to build the muscle. We want to maintain the muscle because it's not just about looking lighter. You want to look leaner, right? You want to improve your body composition. You want to look jacked, toned, whatever it is. You want to have more definition. That's also going to come down to building muscle, maintaining muscle. Not just that. Protein is the most satiating macronutrient, and that is a very, very important point here. Protein is going to keep you full. Protein is going to help you battle cravings. I've seen cravings completely disappear. I've seen people literally go from, hey, I think I'm addicted to chocolate or to candy, whatever it is. And then we crank up protein. So they're actually eating enough protein for once, and it just magically disappears. It's the number, I tell people this all the time. It's like the number one thing you can do to battle cravings. It works. Like, give it a shot. If you struggle with cravings, hunger, bring up your protein. And then, of course, look at your fiber as well. We'll dive into fiber in a sec. It's not one of the pillars, but make sure the fiber is high too. So far, we've got calories and protein. Number three, you probably guessed it already, it's steps. You should be hitting at least 10K steps, 10,000 steps per day. Can you get away with less? Yes, you can. Here's the thing though, when you do so, you need to eat a little bit less to lose the weight. So I'll always push people to move more so that we can get away with as much food as possible for as long as possible, so that we have kind of like room to like remove from, because at some point we're going to have to. Your body adapts, your metabolism adapts, and that's normal. It happens. It's first of all because you lose weight, a smaller body burns fewer calories, but then also because your body will slowly try to adapt and down regulate your need, your non-exercise activity. It's mostly subconscious. It's mostly stuff that you don't notice. But I will say, if you pay attention to your steps and you keep doing so, at least you control your calories burned as good as possible. We're never going to know exactly, and that's okay, but try that. Hit 10K steps on a daily basis. Hey, if you're not there yet, go to 8. Start there. Bring it up to 9. Bring it up to 10. Bring it up to 11, 12. I like pushing for like 12 towards the end of a cut. Like, it's very, it does really help. And the nice thing is that you burn way more calories. More, by the way, than like I don't know, like half an hour on the treadmill where you're like sweating your ass off. And I'm not saying that that's bad, by the way, by no means. You got to do your cardio. But it's nice to have the additional movement without the additional stress response that we would get from intense exercise. You're also going to be able to stick to it way better. Go on a walk, listen to a podcast, get your steps in, get moving. Like, there's no excuse not to, right? You need to be getting, at least 10K steps in during a fat loss phase, if not 12. Maintenance, I'd say like 8 to 10. I give people a range. It's cool. But right here, like, we're doing our best, because remember, guys, when you go into a fat loss phase, we need to go in with the mindset of like, hey, I'm gonna get shit done. I'll make sure that whatever time I spend in this deficit will count, right? Because it's only for a couple months, 3 to 4 months, and then you're gonna be eating more again. And then you take a break at maintenance. And if you want to go for a round 2, a round 3 down the line, that's great. You can do so in the future. But when you go into that deficit now, like, make it count, so that once you take a break, you kind of sit down and you're like, you know what? I did a good job there. Like, I actually, like, I didn't give in to the temptations, and I didn't, what is like, we'll feel guilty like down the road. Like, if you don't do the work. Let me give you an example here. Yes. So there's like I've done a bunch of seminars here now, in person, and there's been times where I practiced a whole bunch, and then there was once where I didn't really, because I got a little confident, right? Like I was like, ah, I got it, I got it. And I do know, like I'm someone who needs that preparation, but it doesn't matter now. Like it's about the fact that I didn't prepare as well as the other times, and guess what? It didn't go as well as the other times. So that was a hard lesson for me. And the thing that kind of like ate at me wasn't even like that it didn't go that great. It was that I knew that I didn't fully do my best to prepare. And that kind of sucks. Bringing this back into your cut, same type of deal. If you know after your fat loss phase, after trying in quotes to diet for 4 months, whatever it is, and not really hitting your steps, not really tracking, not really being, taking your protein goal serious or eating your fruits and vegetables. Once you're then at maintenance, you're going to be like, you know what? I knew that fat loss phase was just going to be like 3 to 4 months, but I also know that I didn't really do a good job, or I didn't really do my best. And I'm not saying that that's the case for everyone. Like, of course, hey, like it's not easy, guys. But I'm just saying the mindset should be, let's get shit done. And when you do the pre work, you should be able to stick to your targets. And if not, then we should maybe not start yet until you do so. So, once again, those three pillars, that should be a daily goal. So, if you want, I have a habit tracker that I use all the time with our clients. It's free. You can download it, no strings attached. The only price you pay is your email address. And hey, by the way, if you want to use it and then just unsubscribe from the newsletter, that's totally great. But that's my only thing that I'll ask, right? That's your only like investment to get a free habit tracker that's helped people lose fat. It's helped people fix their sleep issues. Like I had a client, she was like, I've been struggling with sleep for so long. She couldn't fall asleep. She's like, I have insomnia. Guess what we did? We literally used a habit tracker, and the only one thing on it was like, hey, tick the box. I'm like going to bed at 9:30 and then read a book. And that was the goal. And she was like, this is like the first time in years I've slept so well, because she now finally got to wind down. A friend of mine used this to quit smoking in the middle of his fat loss phase. It's now more than a year ago. He managed. It's amazing to see that. So that being said, if you like that habit tracker, um, go to the show notes. I'll just make sure the link is like right there. You'll see like the introduction, description of the episode, and then it's going to be right there. Download it. It's free, no strings attached. Like I said, just here to help. And I just know that this stuff is so helpful, and I use it with most clients. Not everyone, I will say that, because some people are just really good with targets and with macros, but with a lot of people, I'd say most, we have these three pillars in their habit tracker. So this is literally part of the client sheets that we have for our clients, right? So you kind of like, you get one little part of that. So it's our habit tracker. It's one, two, or three things that you set, daily action goals that you can start ticking off. And then when you hit them, you win the day. You collect a W. And we're going to collect as many daily wins as possible. Hey, by the way, if you don't want to use it, grab a piece of paper. Like I have like a whiteboard here, for example, that works too. But use something that shows you how consistent you are putting in that action every single day. Because once you reflect after 3 to 4 months and can look at, hey, you know what? Like actually I made that count, like those couple months. You're gonna be really fucking proud. So write those, calorie, protein, step targets down on your habit tracker, whether you use mine or someone else's, or you use a piece of paper, whatever it is. But track that shit, use it, right? And look at how consistent you are. And if you're only hitting it like 3 out of 7 days, that's okay. Then next week, you're going to aim for 4. And then you're going to aim for 5. And you know what? 5 to 6 out of 7 days, that is totally great. You don't have to be perfect. It's way more about just showing up. And that should be the goal. We're going to touch on a little bit more kind of like general guidelines for fat loss phases to optimize stuff. But these three pillars need to be taken care of. And every single day of your fat loss phase, you should be aiming for these. So once again, number one, your calories. You got to hit your calories. Then second, you got to hit your protein. Third, you got to hit your steps. Now, when you do so, you tick those boxes, 1, 2, 3, boom, I won the day. Next day, you do it again. Keep going. There's going to be a point where you've been really consistent and you're on a roll, but then even though you're doing everything right, you're going to see that skill go down. Or sorry, that skill slow down, because you should be seeing it go down. But it'll slow down at some point. And if you're watching, right, so it's going pretty steep at some point, it kind of like flattens out. And that's normal. Once again, your body adapts. Your metabolism just down regulates a little. And that's okay. What do? We cut calories. Now, to give you a little bit of adjustment, like guidelines, let's actually take it back all the way to the beginning of your fat loss phase, because I didn't mention that. When you start and you're coming from maintenance, the initial cut of calories should be just about minus, just about 20%. You could say like 15 to 20, but I like to go with 20 so that we know, like, hey, if this is your maintenance range, if you're watching, right, if this is your maintenance range, we want to get out of that range so that we really start seeing that weight go down. So initially it's just about 20%. It's a big adjustment, but you're going to have to get used to it. And then, you'll see that weight go down, which, by the way, could take like 2 to 3 weeks to even show up. Now, then, like I said, further into the fat loss phase, you're doing everything right, it's going well, but then it slows down. You're going to have to cut calories a little bit more. And I'm not talking going from like 2,600 all the way down to like, I don't know, 1,600 and then 1,200 right away. Like, no. Like, what we do is we try to get away with as many calories as possible for as long as possible. Like, that's how we do things differently than like the vast majority of the diets out there. It's like people come from those crazy diets and it's like 1,200 calories, like right off the bat, and everyone gets that. And it's like, yeah, it's going to work. You're going to lose a bunch of weight, but you're also going to hate life. Energy's low. You're going to get cranky. It's going to be super difficult to stick to. Guess what? Most people don't manage, and it's not even their fault. So for those further adjustments, it's going to be like 20%. It's going to be anywhere between, like, let's call it like 5 to 8-ish% of your total calories. You're going to drop that, and then you should see further fat loss. If for whatever reason, after a couple of weeks, your body doesn't respond, look at everything else that I'm about to mention, but consider the possibility that you've been either, one, going for too long, two, you're going for too low, three, you're like, maybe like it's just time, right? It really kind of just depends. Maybe you've tried to diet too much over the last few years. Could be. Now, if you hit a point like that ever, I want you to know that it's always cool to reach out to me on Instagram, Facebook, whatever it is. Send me an email, right? Like, if you go to the show notes, like, there's going to be a bunch of links. Like, hit me up, because if you feel like you're, in quotes, like plateauing and you can't figure it out, like, just ask. It's cool. Like, I'll help you, because I've been there myself and I've seen people struggle with that. So yeah, hit me up on Instagram. But hey, so we've talked about calories, we've talked about, protein steps and tracking it in the habit tracker. There's also a few other things we want to keep in mind, and I would say the next one is also essential. If you don't do this one, you're gonna still kind of hate the process, and that's eating just about 90% like minimally processed foods, or whole foods, single ingredient foods. You already, like, if you've been listening to this podcast for a little while, you know that I always preach 80-20. However, in this scenario, we actually want to go 90-10. 90% minimally processed, 10% anything else. And yes, I mean anything else. However, that 90% needs to be in check. We really got to double down on like minimally processed foods. If you don't really, like, you're going to lose weight still. That's why it's not one of the pillars. Like, you're still going to be able to lose weight. But I've seen people struggle, and then I look at their food diary, because we do that periodically, and it's like, hey, you know what? Like, now I understand, because I'm looking at your food diary and you're not eating fruits and vegetables. Like, your fiber super low, and just overall, right, this is more like a 50-50, or like I recently I saw like a 30-70, like a 30% whole foods, 70% processed. I'm like, hey, like, what are we doing here? So they got a little bit of tough love, and we fixed that, because here's the thing. We don't want to be fucking around during a fat loss phase. We want to take this serious. We want to take it serious, because when you go in, like I said, we make it count so that you can get out ASAP and then have normal food and normal flexibility again. So again, like also there, like I said, if it plateaus in quotes, start here also once again. Is your food quality actually like just about 90-10 in terms of whole foods versus processed foods? Now next up, keep lifting weights. You got to keep lifting weights. It's not going to be impacting your actual weight loss or fat loss, but it's going to be super key for muscle maintenance. And hey, if you're new, you can still be building muscle like in a calorie deficit too. It's just unlikely for most like experienced lifters, but hey, if you're new to the game, you might be building muscle and losing body fat at the same time, which means you're literally like making even more progress than most people would. So get to the gym, keep lifting weights, but also remember you don't have to go super like high intensity. Just take it down a notch. You shouldn't go 100%. If you're cutting, you shouldn't go 100%. Maybe like 70, 80%. Leave some in the tank. Keep lifting weights. Or maybe like let's call it like 80, because I also don't want you to go too kind of like careful. Because I think this is maybe a side note, but I think most people are not fully aware of their 80% and would almost call like a 60%, 80%. And of course, I'm using arbitrary numbers here, but it's like I don't want you to try and PR in a fat loss phase. That's my long story short. Maybe cut it down on like the high intensity stuff, but keep lifting weights. That's going to be key. And do some low intensity cardio. Do your cardio, but make it low intensity. Go for walks. Fruits and veggies makes sense. It's kind of included in the whole foods, but fruits and vegetables, you'd be surprised how many grown-ups don't eat fruits and vegetables these days. And it's like it's common sense to tell every kid, like every parent tells their kids, right? Eat your vegetables, eat your fruits, like it's good for you. Doesn't mean that grown-ups can get away with like not doing that shit. So also there. And by the way, guys, I know these are all things like easier said than done. And in a way it's common sense, but I get it. I currently have clients who mention like, hey, like I never really liked veggies and I could literally be 10, 20, 30 years. Hey, it takes some time to get used to them. And sometimes we do need to kind of suck it up and just start eating them because you can learn to like those foods. But yeah, I mean, it can be a real process, but this really takes us back to the preparation stage. Hey, we want to first make sure that you actually eat your fruits and vegetables consistently and those kind of things. Because if we don't, let's maybe not start a fat loss phase yet. Next up, sleep and stress. These two are so key. These two can actually impact fat loss and inhibit fat loss if they're not in a great spot. So that's already an issue. If sleep is shit and then stress is super high, or either even if it's just one of them, one of the two, that's going to inhibit fat loss. It's like two things that kind of like make fat loss possible, if that makes sense. And there was a really cool study a little while ago. I've used this in many posts, but it's like I looked at two groups. These were training individuals. There was one group who was in bed for 8 hours per night, and then the other group 5.5, and they lost the same amount of weight. However, the group that was only 5.5 hours in bed, they lost way more lean mass. So they lost muscle and less body fat. The group who was in bed for 8 hours per day or per night, they maintained muscle better and they lost more body fat. And that's what we want. It's not just about getting lighter. So if sleep and stress are an issue, look at that too and make a point. And it's not easy, but like make a point of improving those things. It's gonna require work. Sleep also impacts your hunger and satiety hormone. So when your sleep is like not in a great spot, whether that's circadian rhythm, so combining words here, circadian rhythm disruption, or just a lack of sleep, that is going to impact your hunger hormones and satiety hormones. You're going to feel more hungry, you're going to have more cravings, you're going to feel less full. Not a great combination. Now, as for stress, it can also kind of impact your eating behaviors. Some people eat less, some people eat more, but it also boosts fatigue. Like you're going to feel super tired, and it's going to play into willpower and those kind of things. Um, Plus, it kind of kills your motivation. So also there, you're not going to feel like going on your walks. You're not going to feel like lifting weights. You're not going to feel like meal prepping, whatever it is, or tracking. And it just becomes like a vicious cycle. So also sleep and stress Easier said than done, but like pay attention to them. Now, as for sacrifices, like I said, and this should really be a separate episode, but like I think it's okay to say no, and we sometimes feel bad for saying no to people, because here's the thing: if we make something, um, food wise, right? And I'm thinking, I'm future pacing here, like for Christmas and stuff. If someone makes, a certain food or dish or whatever for you, or maybe you make it for someone else, like that's great, that's amazing, and keep doing so, because like food is a big social thing as well. And I'm not saying like completely like remove those. And by the way, like I said, we are going to take a break during Thanksgiving. We are going to take a break during Christmas. We are not going to be dieting. So that goes back to the planning. What I'm talking about is when you are dieting, when you're not during the holidays, right? At maintenance. When you are dieting, I think we can say no a little bit more. You can do the thing that's maybe a little bit weird or uncomfortable, and maybe you're not good at saying no. And personally, I'm like that, and I've had to work on that as well, in many other ways. But if that's difficult for you, understand that you are making a decision for yourself here. You are in a fat loss phase, which means if you do your best, it only needs to be a couple months, and then maybe take a break. And if you want to lose more body fat, cool, you can. You can go for round two, maybe even three for some people, and that's cool. But when you do those fat loss phases, it's okay to say no. You can have more later. It's not going to be a lifestyle thing. You're not going to keep saying no forever. We're just going to make sure that when you are in your fat loss phase, we make sure that you get the most results possible. We make sure that you, like I said earlier, like you're not gonna like finish your cut and be like, well, I kind of half-assed that, and I should have said no to this person, and hey, maybe I should not have had that, that full, the whole pizza or whatever it may be. And those things are great, and I want you to be flexible as well. But remember too, like it's a temporary thing, and maintenance is the place to be afterwards anyway. There's going to be a lot more food after, so let's make sure that we also keep that in mind. So I hope this kind of gave you a little bit of a, yeah, like little bit of insight to what it's going to take to be successful in the fat loss phase, like the things you need to do on a daily basis, the three pillars: calories, protein, steps, but also keeping in mind your fruits, vegetables, your food quality altogether. Of course, you want to sleep, you want to manage your stress, those kind of things, lift your weights, and most importantly, just keep that mindset of, hey, we're going to make it count. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be super diligent all the time. But hey, like if you need a break, you can plan for it. That is cool. But when we're not taking those breaks, like we better do our best, because it's something that's only necessary for a little while, and then we go out again. So it's like, let's get the hell out when we're good and then go to maintenance, because maintenance, guys, is so important. And we still see so many people either neglected or just skip it altogether, right? It's kind of like, oh, they half-ass it, or it's like, well, I kind of don't want to do maintenance. But if you want to be successful long term, this is the diet before the diet as well as the diet after the diet. No one gives you those like strategies. It's like fat loss phase, fat loss phase. Like, no, you got to prepare. And then also afterwards, you need that exit strategy. And we need to go back to maintenance, and we need to learn how to do so and be flexible. But let's talk about that more soon. For now, I think we're going to wrap it up. Thanks for listening once again. And do me a massive favor. If you haven't yet, go to Spotify, go to Apple. I know I'm bringing this up a lot, but it really helps us. And we're doing this for free, right? I love helping people. I love sharing this stuff, and I know it can help you. So if you could do a massive favor, drop us a quick rating, subscribe on YouTube, helps us reach more people. And that's really why we do this, right? We don't do ads. We don't do any of that like annoying stuff. We're just here to help people. So help me, help more people, and then everyone's going to be happy. Sounds good. I will talk to you again very soon.